With the year half over, 2016 will be most likely dubbed as the year of massive market uncertainties. At some points, Malaysia's economy has been battered by global headwinds, but Fullerton Markets CEO Singh believes that there are opportunities hidden in the market, with many potentials waiting to be unlocked. Looking to global recessions, some say that the risk for the global recession has heightened. Is this the case, or is the case overblown?
You know what, I would actually agree with it. If you look at some of the news that's coming out, it's really just bad news all over the place. Japan is adding stimulus. There was Brexit in June. US doesn't really look too good now. In fact, they had some green shoots at the start of the year, but numbers are all just they're just all moving downwards. So it's not too far off to say that we might tip into a global recession at the end of the year. One key indicator I always love to look at, Max, is always what the IMF says, the International Monetary Fund. And what they recently mentioned was that they have now downgraded global growth as well.
Right.
They've actually said that for this year, numbers could come in anywhere about 3.1, about 3.0. That is actually a downward revision from what they had. So if the IMF is actually saying that our numbers are actually going to be down for global growth, not too far off to think that might be a global recession at the end of the year.
Yeah, but there will be some positive growth of the economy, right?
My answer would be saying, it would be yes, but at the same time, the entire global demand and supply is just so weak. If there's no growth, if there's no driver that's pushing the economy forward, right, then really all other economies are going to be affected. It's all the way from Southeast Asia. Even Singapore recently just reported that our non-oil domestic exports, all these numbers are also low. Right. Singapore is reporting weak numbers. Malaysia is reporting weak numbers. Even places like Japan reporting flat GDP. So whether is it from Southeast Asia to the advanced economies, not really a bright sign forward.
Yeah, but what do you see for Malaysia? Are you seeing a positive growth for the economy? Are you seeing bright outlook, in the short term?
A great question. So let me just cover a few points. So if you look at numbers, right, what are the numbers that's coming out? Malaysia's GDP is actually dropping, all right? From Q1 to Q2, we had numbers of 4.2% in Q1, and now it's dropping to about 4% in Q2. This is, in fact, the lowest showing in the last 5 quarters. They've all had negative growth, or rather growth is decelerating over the last 5 quarters. So against that backdrop, we have to understand why numbers are so weak. Again, number one, global demand. Global demand is weak, so that's one that's affecting Malaysia's GDP. In terms of oil revenue, in terms of exports, all these numbers are dropping. However, having said that, right, the interesting part about Malaysian economy right now, if you look at the stock market, the stock market is actually propping up. Right? If you look at numbers, right, I think the highest it has reached over the last 1 year was over 1,700. Right. Today is hovering about 1,695 thereabouts. So there are some green shoots. There are some good dividend plays for some of the stock market companies in Malaysia. So against that gloomy backdrop, I still think you can find some rare jewels.
Now, Mario, we've seen Eurozone and also Japan flirting with negative interest rates. Are you a big fan of the negative rates?
I'm not, but then again, this is sometimes when I put myself in their shoes, what more can they be doing? If you look at negative interest rates, right, what exactly does that mean? You put $100 in the bank, over a year, you actually have to pay the bank to put your money in there.
Right.
So Japan, let me give you one example. You brought up Japan and Europe, right? If you look at Japan now, Japan is actually in a sweet spot.
Right.
What do I mean when I say in a sweet spot? Well, they have recently just launched another bazooka. Over the next few years, in terms of their stimulus, is about $28 trillion.
Right.
Still fighting deflation, still wanting to reinflate the entire economy. Sweet spot meaning to say, although the currency is strong, prices are dropping down because of deflation.
Right.
What is good is that for this particular case now in Japan, it's very good for the consumers, because prices are dropping. So that's good for consumers, but not so very good for the producers. So Japan has achieved probably a portion of what they wanted. They are helping the consumers, but now they've got to start to reinflate the economy to help the producers.
Now, Mario, turning on to the local equity market for Malaysia. Now, some say that the market is entering the bearish territory. Is this the case? Do you believe that?
Well, when I look at the stock market here in Malaysia right now, obviously there's more money moving into the bond market. But if you look at specifically on the stock market, I'm going to give you both the fundamental look at it, the technical look at it, right? So if you look at the fundamental part of it, there is money pouring into the Malaysian equity market. You know, the whole of last month, since July, there's over 1.5 billion ringgit that's actually pouring into the equity market. So that's something good. However, more people still like the bond play. Traditionally, many people invest in bonds because of yields.
Yes.
They invest in stocks because of capital gains. Have you seen a very interesting trend, right? Recently, the exact opposite is happening. People are now investing in bonds, not because of yields. They're investing in bonds because of capital gains. They're investing in stocks because of so-called yields or dividend play. You know, classic example, if you look at some of the Malaysian equity stocks, here there are some companies that are actually giving dividend yields above 5%. And that's great, considering the backdrop of what the central bank has done in terms of dropping the central bank rate to 3%.
Right. Now, can investors find alpha in these challenging times?
Answer will be yes. Again, the question will be where. You know, this is a question that many people, even retail investors or even corporate investors, want to find out. So, is it in bonds? Is it in equities? Is it in currencies? Or is it in alternative investments? The real answer actually comes down to the investor himself or herself.
Right.
The real question would be, if you are seeking for higher yield, if you are seeking for a nice alpha, what kind of risk are you willing to put on the table in exchange for that return? And once a person is able to understand that kind of risk profile, you know, it really is up to the investor to say, hey, I would now take on slightly riskier bonds to achieve a higher yield, or I might now go into alternative investments, I might now go into infrastructure dividends. So it's really up to the investor, as long as they are able to understand their own risk profile.
Now, given the depressed asset prices in several markets in Malaysia, do you see this as opportunities for investors to accumulate certain things in Malaysia?
Answer is yes. So this is again, right? I mean, Warren Buffett's famous quote, be greedy when others are fearful, be fearful when others are greedy. I believe that, because as long as you're thinking in a different mindset, there are always opportunities. So in terms of the property play, one idea, you know, that I can share with our viewers would be, start accumulating land. Land in a sense, because prices are depressed. Interest rates not very high.
Right.
It is a perfect play. Rather than invest in certain properties, why not be in a position to accumulate land itself? And then you have the choice, in a sense. Are you going to build residential properties? Are you going to build commercial properties? So definitely the answer is yes. There are some rare jewels out there. Just got to do your homework and find out the best plot.
Despite many challenges, Fullerton Markets believe that opportunities are still abundant in Malaysia.